about Yusuf Datti Baba-Ahmed. Well, for more on this, I'm joined now in the studio, I'm delighted to say, by the vice presidential candidate of the Labour Party himself, Yusuf Datti Baba-Ahmed. Thank you very much indeed for coming in and taking the time to talk to us. You mentioned a lot of very crucial things in your press conference. Perhaps we should start with the last thing that you talked about, which is the question of the Naira redesign crisis. It's a very topical issue at the moment. After President Buhari extended by 2 months the deadline for the old 200 Naira denomination to be handed in, the governor of Kaduna State, Nasser Al-Rufai, challenged or at least alleged that the scarcity of the Naira as well as the fuel shortage are part of a plot to disrupt the election, and that, you know, he essentially told people in his state to hold on to their old Naira as it remains legal tender in the state. You described that as treasonable. Tell us more.
The meaning of Commander-in-Chief means the exclusivity of the powers of that office to decide on matters that have to do with the sovereignty of a country. Nigerian constitution is very clear on the fact that currency matters are, exclusive to the federal government. So is it everywhere in the world. So has it been all time in history. Remember during the Roman times, Caesar after Caesar would have their pictures engraved, one era after another. That tells you the link between sovereign authorities and legal tender. In fact, it defines legal tender. It also defines nations. When a commander-in-chief actually gives out such a powerful directive, order, presidential order for that matter, everyone for that matter is to fall in line. The only thing is that the federal government, through its agencies, is therefore bound by its oath of office to implement the availability and all other issues that come with that change, protect the welfare of the people, and so on. It is completely out of place for any state governor or a group of state governors to constitute themselves into a nuisance and begin to challenge in the manners they are doing now. Now, why I called it treason is that a commander-in-chief gives his order and a state governor gives a direct counter order to that. Immunity does not mean that the offense was not committed. The offense was committed. It can be booked, it can be recorded, anything can happen to it, especially treasonable ones. Remember, there is crime. They are protected from criminal. They have immunity against criminal offenses as state governors. I don't know, we need a legal expert to tell us if state governors are immune from treason. Call it anything. The bottom line is a commander-in-chief gives an order, a state governor says, don't do it, do mine. That is treason. That's undermining. Right. You're undermining the sovereignty.
But it's not quite that cut and dry, though, is it? Because the point he was making was that the case is before the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court has given a subsisting order, which was an ex parte order, that the order that they gave has to remain in place until the case is decided.
Charles, I'm from Kaduna State. In fact, before I joined this ticket, I aspired to be a governor in Kaduna. I know Kaduna very well. I also happen to know the gentleman Nasiru very well. He's also sued me to court. So I'm a bit careful about, because he and I in court, even though we're not discussing that matter that I said, I know Kaduna very well, I know Nasiru very well. And he went to the extent of pledging him and the state government that is coming, and Tinubu's government coming when they come, we're going to exchange the old Naira notes that people keep, and that they should continue to trade with their monies when the constitutional powers of the commander-in-chief clearly provide for the opposite.
But what about the constitutional powers of the Supreme Court? I mean, is there a conflict between President Buhari's decision on this cash swap policy and the moves that are taking place at the Supreme Court with regard to that issue? Because the Supreme Court was very clear on what should happen.
Yes.
I mean, the lawyer asked them in court, what happens next?
Charles, let me take us back a bit.
Right.
There are some acts that, if wrongly intended, whatever you do, they can never work right. Throughout history, the roles of central banks, and I can tell you this from my little knowledge of economics, they are lenders of the last resort. They are bankers of the government. They are also regulators. Besides that, even fiscal policy is not for central banks. We have seen ours engage in fiscal, but no one could do anything about it. Strictly monetary, regulatory, financial, and monetary, strictly. Never in history has any bank anywhere in the world had anything to do with elections. So with due respect, the fundamental about the Naira swap was misplaced, if it is to aid or to protect, or if it has anything to do with elections. Currencies never have anything to do with elections. Throughout history, I'm telling you, it is the first time it's happening in Nigeria. It is strange, it is absurd. Currencies are changed all over the world for technical reasons, for durability, for the passage of the monarchs or of the leaders, for some other acceptability or some other currency in the world, some other nation in the world has something similar to yours, or denomination issues. Inflation leads to a time where you have to change it. A variety of reasons. None has ever had to do with elections. Here we are in Nigeria. Our commander-in-chief is linking currency swap to it. This is very, very strange and absurd. Right. First, and also a first one in history. So it will continue to go wrong. Don't be surprised. Even the Supreme Court, with all its powers, to find it challenging to rule on this. They will eventually do, I believe. They have the capacity to do. But then when the fundamental is wrong, and the fundamental on this one is wrong. But look, it's the commander-in-chief. It's a sovereign country. It's our country. It's been done. We just have to make the best out of this situation.
Right. But let's take the point, I mean, because I want to move on. There's a lot of other things to talk to you about, and it's great to have you in here.
Charles, let me just tell you, treason is when you have another authority trying to undermine constituted authority.
Right.
There is no other name for it. It is
Let's assume it's treason.
And I really don't know if governors are immune from prosecution. Right. Because if you're a state governor and you try to overthrow the federal government and then you claim immunity,
right?
I doubt if the Nigerian army will let you.
Can we, let me ask you this then. Yeah. If you and Peter Obi were in power today as president and vice president, how would you deal with that situation?
I will immediately summon the AGF, obtain full legal interpretation of the kind of immunity that state governors have. Is it only criminal or it includes treason? And if it does not include treason, I assure you El-Rufai will be placed under arrest immediately and served justice immediately.
Okay, well,
there is no way you can undermine a commander-in-chief by saying, go and do the opposite of what he has the power to say. This is highly, highly disrespectful. And for Mr. Commander-in-Chief, I don't know what has transpired between them for them to disrespect him this much. In 2014-15, what has transpired between them, I don't know. But you need to have lost a great deal of respect for governors to treat you this way as a commander-in-chief.
So what impact do you think all this might have on the elections? It's just 8 days away.
Chaos. But somehow I trust Nigerians. Really, really, we want to unite. The Obi opportunity, Nigerians will not throw this away. Not the Naira swap, not intimidation of anybody giving counter orders and all those kind of things. Nothing will stop Nigerians. Yes, a bit of difficulty in feeding daily hand to mouth, moving to the election polling units and all those things. Nigerians want to see a new Nigeria. Nothing will stop us.
Yeah, but one thing that could potentially stop that, beyond the Naira cash swap policy, is violence and insecurity. And we know, for example, that in the stronghold, one of the strongholds of the Labour Party, which is the Southeast, a faction of the IPOB group has come out, led by Simon Ekpa, to say that basically he's imposing a sit-at-home order and that anyone who violates that will be met with extreme force. I mean, how would you assess the strength of that Simon Ekpa chap? Because despite the announcement of IPOB itself suspending its sit-at-home order in some parts of the Southeast, Simon Ekpa appears to have been able to sustain it.
Do you know where the irony is? You speak about insecurity. The most insecure places in Nigeria today are those who are even ready to vote. Right now, Kaduna, Niger, our Nasirus Kaduna, the Benungwari axis that, except where there is, INEC is not going to deploy. Kaduna State is going to vote. Niger State, Katsina State, Zamfara State will vote. Yobe and Borno will vote. Nigeria has seen greater insecurity at the peak of BH and 2019, at the peak of the, even though it is still high, the bandits in Zamfara, Katsina, Niger and Kaduna, at their peak, Nigerians still voted. That is the irony. There is a higher percentage of registered voters in those places. There was higher levels of violence meted out against Nigerians, higher number of people in captivity, higher number of people killed, larger territory under their control, not in the Southeast. I would like some questions to be, and regarding IPOB, we have our roles clearly cut out. My boss is more competent to answer questions regarding, because he's been a governor there. So I'll limit how much answers I will give you, because I would like to be very thorough in my
Yes, I totally
answers.
understand that.
But I would like us to know
Right.
a little more about the gentleman Simon and who his godfathers, business associates, patrons have been in recent times. And it would be good to know if there is any of his patrons that are politically inclined. It would be good to know if any of the patrons for Mr. Simon is actually contesting an election. Then you will begin to assemble the puzzle. But I'm really not an authority on IPOB.
No, I understand
Someone is more competent.
Sure.
You will find that person and he will
Yes,
answer you.
and that makes
But
a lot
I'm
of
giving
sense,
you the
but
fundamentals.
I understand that,
about
but let me ask you this. How damaging would it be to the chances of Peter Obi winning this election if voting is not able to take place across the Southeast, or if it is disrupted and many people obey the sit-at-home order because, I mean, the Southeast is a stronghold, isn't it?
You know, the interesting thing about Nigeria is the news sometimes deceive us to underestimate the resolve of certain parts of Nigeria. A good example is when I was telling you that Peter Obi was going to be welcomed in the north. People didn't believe it, and we saw even more than we ever expected. I am now telling you, with the little I've seen in the southeast is going to surprise Nigerians. Their resilience, their resolve to do it. Only yesterday, there was a communique from a certain body, I think is the council, Paramount Council of the traditional rulers and the clergy in the southeast. It was carefully, powerfully worded. And I am confident Southeasterners are going to respect the spirit and content of that communique. Everything is going to crumble hours to the elections. And Southeasterners will come out, exercise their rights, vote like you've never seen votes before. I would even like to insist what I have told you before. There are Nigerian expatriates who, and I have even seen them, who will buy tickets and fly all the way to Nigeria simply for the purpose of motivating others to vote. This threat will crumble hours to the time, and whoever is behind it will be put to shame. And our southeastern counterparts of Nigeria are going to make us proud.
Right.
You will say that I told you this.
Right. Do you trust the Nigerian security services when they say they will not allow anyone to truncate this general election?
Nigerian authorities, until when it happens, then I will say yes. Listen, you and I heard promises in 2015. The promises have been going on, and we saw the exact opposite. So what I have adopted is that the beginning of wisdom is to always put a question mark, to say the least, and the beginning of wisdom is to disbelieve government, this kind of government that we have. That's the beginning of wisdom. So yes, I am asking them, I'm challenging them. It's a challenge to Nigerian security forces. Give us free, fair, credible elections, including INEC, that is. When you see it, when I see it, when it's done, I'll say it.
Right.
If I don't say it, I will not believe you in advance.
So let's assume that...
Remember, I suffered electoral fraud severally in 2007, and I was being the gentleman. No violence, no fighting, let's go to court. I know what I saw. No compromising of... And while I was seated in the Senate, you know all the things that happen. So I have a fair amount of experience as far as our beloved Nigerian authorities are concerned, and more the motivation for me to make sure that we change it.
Right. So here you are, you've got 8 days to go before crucial elections that you have fought very hard to try and get to where you are with yourself and Peter Obi. What do you have to say to the Nigerian people about why they should vote for you and Peter?
It is logical and arithmetical. 18 political parties presented candidates for presidency. 15 of them, so to say, are somehow nowhere to be found. Out of the 3 that are left, 2 have misconfigured themselves to win an election in Nigeria. I'll explain it. First, issue of faith. We both agree, our faiths. Our Creator makes no mistake. There are countries in this world that you can find nearly 100% one faith, one tribe, one language. And Creator didn't make mistake. We in Nigeria are lucky to have this diversity, 250, 6 or 3 major ones, 2 major competing religions, and all that. And the Creator didn't make mistake. That's the issue of faith, number one. To bring Nigerian political history very quickly, 6 years after independence, trouble. 3 years began to recover. We didn't find our political bearing till 19 years later. General Obasanjo, it was elections quite okay. President Shagari won. Count it won. Military came for 15 years. After 8 years, President Babangida was leaving, but because he knew the ins and outs and the rights and wrongs of Nigeria, Muslim Northern President Babangida looked for Ernest Shonekan of blessed memory, Southern Christian, and gave. Count that 2. Fast forward, Abacha came, Abdul Salam, and then Abdul Salam, in the presence of all the Northerners and all that, then, even though it was elections, handed over to Christian Southern Chief Olusegun Obasanjo in 99. I think that is 4, right? Fast forward 2007, one Peter was about to defeat one Umaru in the Eagle Square, and you know how PDP was then. Then Umaru won, one of blessed memory, and he was, Obasanjo handed to Northern Muslim late Umaru. 5. Almighty God recalled him. Northerners Muslims stood for the constitution to prevail, and Goodluck Jonathan was given the presidency. He asked for 2011. He won. Fast forward again, 2015, when PDP, for what it was, again reneged and all that, Southern Christians in broad daylight came out and stood against that. One of them, in broad daylight, destroyed a party membership card just for Northern Muslim Muhammadu Buhari to be sworn in,
right,
to win presidency.
So what's the point? Because we're almost out of time.
What I'm telling you now is that the 4th DNA of Nigeria is rotation. This DNA regulates our body temperature. Without it, our body will overheat and will die from that fever. Rotation must happen. The same reason that today Tinubu is not vice president of Nigeria, today, here and now, in 2015, when President Buhari said Muslim ticket could not work, he had to nominate somebody. That same reason is here, present, real, now, as we are here today. The same reason that Atiku said it was the turn for the North in 2015. He can't come back again and say it is in 2019. Politicians in the mold of Peter Obi, Wike, Emmanuel Odom, and others, in 2019, they restrained themselves from contesting. I aspired and I lost. What they showed us, they showed respect and love to other Nigerians. They showed Nigerianness. What does respect require? It should be reciprocated. So any political system, party, or individual that are deceiving themselves, that they have misconfigured themselves, one of them hopelessly so, and that they are going to win 2023 elections in today's Nigeria, in today's world, are simply deceiving themselves. There's only one political party rightly configured to win the elections, and that is Labour Party. And I stand by this. I really, really mean it. Nigerian security, Nigerianness is at stake. Anybody who did not follow and who have misaligned themselves with Nigerian political history are out of this game. They are wasting their time. They could walk on the ground with any Simon, they could do anything. Those instructions will not work. Nigerians will come out and surprise everybody. Even the security agencies you're talking about, somehow their conscience will work that morning, and they will sheath their swords. They will come out and work for the Nigeria of our dreams. 2023 presidential elections.
We really have to go.
I know, I'll round it up. 2023 presidential elections, if conducted well, holds the promise of delivering the long-awaited, stable, secure, prosperous Nigeria that the world needs right now.
Okay.